a Baylor legend. No, the Baylor legend is coming to the defense of Dave Aranda. But why?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. And on today's episode, we're looking at the Baylor legend who is rushing to the aid of Dave Aranda, but does he really need to? Plus, speaking of Dave Aranda, why can't he just name Sawyer Robertson the full-time quarterback? Or is there something else there? I don't know. And looking at the defensive side of the ball, Dave Aranda's side of the ball, once again, the transfer that Baylor picked up that is paying instant dividends that I got to admit I was not expecting. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Starting, Robert Griffin III. You might have heard of him, known as RG3, colloquially. To some, known as like the guy who is responsible for Baylor being the university that it is today. In some ways, he is. Heisman Trophy winner, the only in Baylor's history, obviously. And at worst, if you get an old timer who was out there watching, the Southwest Conference champs of 1980, at worst, he would say Robert Griffin III is the second best player in Baylor football history. Depending on what generation you ask, it's Mike Singletary or it's RG3, but it's hard to argue with the hardware that RG3 brought to Baylor and that beautiful, shiny McLean Stadium that you walk into 6 Saturday afternoons in the fall. You can thank RG3 for that. There is no bounds to what RG3 has done for this football program, this athletics program, and this university. It's called the Flutie effect. Same thing happened at Boston College in the mid-'80s. Doug Flutie wins the Heisman Trophy, and all of a sudden, BC goes from this tiny little Catholic school in the Northeast that happens to play football to a destination for top recruits in the area and a place that people are applying to all over the country. Their applications tripled overnight after the Hail Mary from Doug Flutie in Miami. And I will say Hail Mary on this podcast without wincing. I'm going to try. RG3 had that same effect on Baylor. In fact, brother, if RG3 doesn't win the Heisman Trophy at Baylor, I'm not the host of this podcast because I probably don't even hear about Baylor in suburban Massachusetts. But here we are. I have RG3 to thank for that. So talk about being an idol of this university. He is right there, man. I am such a devout fan of RG3 and what he has done for Baylor, and I thank him for so many things. He puts out a tweet this week, the other night, talking about Dave Aranda. And I'm just going to read it, although most of you have already seen it. Hearing a lot of noise around Dave Aranda and his future at Baylor after the loss to Colorado. So I just wanted to say Dave Aranda has my full support. I'm a fan of Aranda the coach and how unique he is, and I'm a fan of Aranda the man. He has been great to my family and been a phenomenal developer of men at Baylor. Every player in that locker room plays their heart out for him, his coaching staff, and the university. The God-honest truth is every player in that locker room has to understand they aren't just playing to get bowl eligible or be better than they were last year. They are playing for Coach Aranda, continuing to be able to build with them on and off the field. Coach Dave Aranda is worth not giving up on. Coach Dave Aranda is brilliant and a leader of men. The only people who can turn the season into a success are the players in the locker room. The only one who can get the fans to buy back in are the players in the locker room. It won't be easy, but God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors. Hashtag sick 'em. The part about RG3 putting it on the players as a former player himself makes a lot of sense because we get pretty quick to throw it out there that it's Coach Aranda's fault. And you heard me the past couple of days go through all kinds of emotions. And yeah, I'm putting a little bit more on Dave Aranda than I am on the players for that particular game and that alignment on the Hail Mary, which I've been told is not a Hail Mary. But in terms of just this impassioned plea, cry to Baylor fans and to whom it all may concern that you can't fire Dave Aranda, I kind of read that and said, whoa, 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 whoa. Where is this coming from? And he starts it by saying, I'm hearing a lot of noise about Dave Aranda and his future at Baylor after the loss to Colorado. You were? Really? Because look, I did the live post game and I have the comment section, and there were absolutely some people that said fire Aranda. The time is now. And we know that there's definitely a sect, whether it's a majority or the minority of Baylor fans, that are saying fire Aranda and have been saying for a while now. But was that like an uproar after Saturday night? That's kind of my thing here. Like, where did this come from? I follow, plenty on social media for Baylor and the message boards and my comment section. I didn't see any more than I normally would after a Baylor loss. And what's kind of funny about this is we have thought so much in depth and in detail over the last year or so on how Dave Aranda would be fired or what it would take to keep him in his position now. And we've gone through the weeds, how many wins it needs to take, how much better do they need to look, what games do they need to win, and which games can they not afford to lose. We've looked through so much of that. And none of it was in my head after the loss Saturday night. First off, he didn't get fired after a 3-9. He's not going to get fired when the record's 2-2. It's not going to happen. Okay. And so that's why I'm wondering, like, this isn't new. If you were going to make an impassioned cry for Dave Aranda, it probably should have been after that West Virginia game last year. Because I think a lot of us were expecting an announcement the next day. Some of us going into that press conference thinking, what if Mac Rhodes is the first one to take the podium here? Like, that's how close it felt like we were to Dave Aranda getting fired last football season. And then after having Coach Prime on the new podcast, Out of Pocket podcast with RG3, once Dave Aranda loses to Coach Prime, he's like, do not fire this man. No way. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It wasn't, his job security really wasn't any different than it was 2 days before the loss. Like, if we're being honest, if they kept him after a 3-9 season, they're keeping him through the season. If it was a 1-4, 1-5 start, maybe that's different. But at this point, where again, we have seen that the team looks better, they're going to keep him throughout the season. They went 3-9 last year. And again, as much as I love RG3 and what he's done for this university, it's not like he's here every Saturday and has that pull in the athletic department like a Bob Stoops would have at Oklahoma. If Bob Stoops doesn't like the OU coach, that OU coach, his days are numbered. Even Grant Taft, who's still at all these games, he would never do it because he's a very classy guy. But if he didn't like the head football coach and came out and said he didn't like the head football coach, that guy's days would be numbered at Baylor. But RG3 isn't necessarily that anymore. He's still the best player ever to play at Baylor, but it's not that same kind of pull. You know what I mean? And certainly I don't know that he would say that publicly if he did want the coach to be fired. So I don't know. When I first read it, I was like, is someone reaching out to him to ask him to say this? Like, it doesn't feel like a thing Baylor would do, but like, what's kind of going on here? So I was more confused than anything of why RG3 was coming out and saying, no, don't do it. Don't do it. It's like you're sitting in like a quiet, waiting room at a doctor's office, and someone just comes running in being like, don't pull the fire alarm. It's like, okay, all right. We weren't. Okay. There was a fire here a couple hours ago and nothing happened. We didn't pull the fire alarm then. So no, trust me, like, everything's fine. That's kind of the way I thought about this. So it just kind of was out of left field. Baylor's best ever player is defending their head coach just like that. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Did I miss a report that like he was about to get fired? I don't know. And no one else was like, throwing themselves into the defense plea. And then again, I didn't see anyone on social media that was like, he needs to be gone now or else, Baylor. I mean, obviously some people think that, but no one of a stature like that was like, hey, it's time for him to go. And there weren't even, folks in the media. There were no think pieces. I mean, this is a day after no one even asked at his press conference about the Hail Mary. I don't think there's a bunch of heat on Dave Aranda right now. And all it does is bring attention to everyone else around the country to say, oh, yeah, that is a weird coaching situation there. Baylor kind of stinks. I forgot that this was their head coach. He's still there. Why haven't they fired this guy? To me, that's all that's happening with this tweet. That's all. So I found that very interesting of like where this was coming from. I do want to know what you guys think. Drop that in the comments below. Did you think this was out of nowhere? Did you find this to be inspiring? Did you think this was going against the grain? I just thought it was like a big, like nothing burger after what happened on Saturday. Tough loss, but I don't think his job was really in danger after that loss to Colorado. Maybe that's just me. All right, fans. ROI, that new platform I've been telling you about, it is time to highlight my ROI player of the week, okay? ROI lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. So you can download it for iOS or Android, enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary. Okay, this week I have selected Josh Cameron. You might have heard of it might have thought of it because of how much I'm talking about him the last few days. But you look at the game Josh Cameron had. Oh my, 91 yards in punt return and 6 receptions on the game as well. Just a heck of a day for him going up against Colorado and really, again, making the name for himself to be one of the best receivers, one of the top targets on this Baylor team. So he is my player of the week ROI for week number 3. And you can give what you want. I'm going to give him $100 on ROI. If you were as impressed as we were with that performance, you can show him some love too. Just hop on ROI, throw in a few bucks. If everyone pitches in 10, that really adds up for Josh Cameron. I'm just saying, now you have the chance to show your appreciation for him and to standout performance as well as what he'll continue to do to build the program. So get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROI. And congratulations to our pal, Josh Cameron, as our first ROI player of the week here on Locked On Baylor. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. It's the only place that you should be hiring from or looking for a job because it's not like any other job board. Okay. You hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking there, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire a professional like a professional. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Sawyer Robertson now started the last 2 weeks for the Bears. They're 1-1. I think they've been pretty solid performances in both games. You would think, okay, that's going to lead to Sawyer Robertson being the starting quarterback now. We know Jaquan Finn is banged up, but he was available to go on Saturday. That's the story that we heard. But he's been a little banged up. Sawyer Robertson's looked more comfortable. They took some shots down the field in this game, even had a rushing touchdown. So a natural question for Dave Aranda in his weekly press conference was, is Sawyer Robertson just the starter full stop now? Here's what Dave said to that.
Coach, has Sawyer played his way into that starting quarterback role for the future?
I'm excited about Sawyer. I thought he really played well. I thought that, there was some, early on, everyone we played us some press man. And so there was, the running lanes were tight, the throwing windows were tight. He was throwing us open on a couple back shoulders, and then, the +1 quarterback run game really had to be kind of the answer there for a little bit, and he was doing that. And then to manage us through kind of where we got stalled out a little bit, to push through on the other side, a lot of that was Sawyer's leadership, and so really confident in him. And I think he's getting better with each start. And so I'm looking forward to this next one.
Yeah, Dave, and I really like chocolate ice cream. That's about as relevant as that answer was to that question. Is he the starter? Well, we really like him. And you see it was like that. I really like Sawyer and his confidence. And team's been playing press man against us, and he's made some good throws, and I'm really excited to see how he grows. Like, yes or no? Yes or no? It's like the perfect non-answer. Just 50 seconds of just nothing to saying whether Sawyer Robertson is going to be the starter or not. To which I say, like, why not? I know plenty of people say, well, why would you? But why not just say, yes, Sawyer is our starting quarterback? Even if it's, hey, we're looking to see if DeQuan Finn can get back to 100%, but Sawyer's our guy. Like, to me, it just feels like a ship that's still trying to figure out who their captain is. Sawyer Robertson has been the better quarterback of the two. He has been better than DeQuan Finn this year. He has been more confident. He's been more comfortable in the pocket. The offense moves when he's out there. They score when he is the quarterback. In fact, the one half that they really struggled to score against Air Force was a half where 3 receivers, pass catchers, had fumbles. And I don't know how you put that on the quarterback. 6'4", 220. He has stood in the pocket. He has not thrown off his back foot, and he's putting up numbers. You saw a Colorado team that was covering well down the field, but he still took his shots and completed them. So far, he is 29 for 45 on the year. He's thrown a couple of touchdowns. He's ran for a couple of touchdowns. He has not thrown a pick, and he's only taken 1 sack in each of his 2 starts. And he had a 45-yard rushing touchdown the other day. 45 yards. Is he as good a runner as DeQuan Finn? No. But he's a big body. He's a heck of an athlete, and he's tough to bring down one-on-one. So he's giving you something of what DeQuan Finn would give you as well. And he's giving you more in the passing game than what you saw from DeQuan Finn in weeks 1 and 2. Why is he not just the starting quarterback for the Baylor Bears? That's what I'm trying to figure out now. Like, as much as I get it, oh, you don't want to, show your hand here. It's like, but how much is the other team even prepared for DeQuan Finn this week? How much is BYU really preparing for DeQuan Finn? The kid has earned the starting job. Can you just call him the starting quarterback? Humor us a little bit. I don't see any way how he's not the starter of this football team. Like, it was a night and day difference, especially in that second half against Air Force. Night and day versus what DeQuan Finn gave you against Utah. And then you give him a primetime, tough environment on the road against a solid team in conference. And, 11-21 isn't anything to write home about, but you watch that game. I don't think the problem was on the quarterback. I think it was a team that was trying to establish the run too much and not being very good at it. And when you wanted to take shots down the field, and when you had to take shots down the field, you had to score at one point and you wanted to throw it, Sawyer Robertson was the guy. And then when you tried to get conservative, instead of assuring that you would go up 2 scores, it was because the ball was not in Sawyer Robertson's hands. But it's not like he was missing open guys. He didn't have miscommunications with his receivers. He didn't throw hospital balls. He didn't throw near picks. He didn't. He hasn't done that in any of his 2 starts, either of his 2 starts. No throw has been like that. No throw where you're like, what is this kid thinking? Oh my gosh. And then we talk about how this offense is supposed to fit him, and it's looking like it's fitting him. And he's not making mistakes, and he's making plays in the passing game. 2 bomb touchdown throws against Colorado. And we're not ready to name him the starter? For what? As the great Ricky Waters once said, for who? For what? He meant to say for whom, but I'm not going to hold him against that. But the writers are going to hold him against that going into the Hall of Fame. How is Sawyer Robertson not your starting quarterback right now? That's what I really want to know. I should be asking you guys. How is Sawyer? What is the excuse for Sawyer Robertson to not be the starting quarterback? I think I've given pretty good examples and reasoning as to why he should be the starter. Get in the comment section, tell me why he shouldn't be the starter, or what the coach is thinking in not naming him the starter. Please Drop that down in the comments below because I would love to know. I'd love to be enlightened by this. And coming up, Sawyer Robertson is a transfer, but we're going to talk about some of the other transfers that are making impact on this team. One in particular that is making me eat my words just a little bit. That's coming up on the Locked On Baylor podcast. But first, I got to tell you about our friends at FanDuel, a proud sponsor of this show and, of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. Because I'm talking to you, NFL fans. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel, a lot like Baylor special teams. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same place where you placed your bets on FanDuel. You're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let me say that again. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It has been the year of the transfer, the offseason of the transfer anyway, for Baylor. Finally, they were plugging in guys from the transfer portal who could come in and be starters right away. We talked about Sawyer Robertson. He came in the year before, came in as a backup. That's what Dave Aranda has done. He's done it with some depth pieces. Now he's doing it with starters. Snacks Johnson had a good game against Colorado. Played in the program before, but he's a portal guy. Keaton Thomas, who I think has been awesome this season, just awesome. He comes in as a portal guy this year and gets slotted in as a starter. You look at the offensive side, right? DeQuan Finn, your starting quarterback, and maybe still, he's from the portal this year. Maybe your best playmaking receiver so far this year, Ashton Hawkins. He comes in through the portal from Texas State. Michael Trigg, quiet game against Colorado, but one I think is going to be a big-time factor for this offense throughout the season. Transfer portal guy. But there is one that I wouldn't say down on, but just not all that jazzed about when he came in through the portal from Texas Tech, from inside the Big 12, who stole the show on Saturday. And I've been singing his praises since. I thought he was awesome. Steve Linton. In fact, PFF and QB pressures in week 4. You know who led the nation? You know who led the nation in QB pressures this week? Steve Linton. The guy who comes in from Tech. He's not an every down player. To be fair, he's not really an every down player for Baylor either. But he comes in from Tech. He had 3 sacks last year. They were all against Baylor. We watched Baylor last year. We saw that offense. We saw that offensive line. If all your sacks are coming against that team, how impressed can you really be? Maybe he just likes playing at McLean. Maybe that's what it was. Gabe Hall, 2 years ago, had 3.5 sacks against Tech. He had like 1 the rest of the year. That's what I'm thinking. Are we bringing in another Gabe Hall? A guy who everyone tells us is good, but we don't see the production out there on the field. We don't see the sacks numbers. We don't see the TFL numbers. Steve Linton has said, no, I am going to bring you the numbers. And it's not just going to be at McLean Stadium because he waltzed into Folsom Field and was great on the defensive side of the ball with the 9 QB pressures, 5 solo tackles, a couple of sacks, a couple of TFLs, a QB hurry in there, and a forced fumble. Oh, boy, you remember that play? Oh, if someone could have fallen on it for Baylor, the game would have been over. Now, there was someone in the area, but there was like 3 buffs around there. But he forced that fumble. He was money in this game. Money. I came into this game saying, is this Baylor pass rush going to be good enough to expose a bad offensive line? It was. It was. They didn't win the game, but it was. They had 8 sacks. Like, imagine what this kid Shador can do if he had a real offensive line. Whew, Maron. We wouldn't be talking about anybody else for the Heisman. Instead, he makes do with what he has and absolutely did all of that in the game on Saturday. But I came into this game against Colorado thinking we're going to learn a lot about this defense. Okay? Like, this is a little bit make or break for the defense. We've been impressed so far, but we also know they haven't really played anybody with any real offensive firepower. This week they did. The point total isn't what you want, 31 points in regulation. But again, this is not an excuse, but a couple of fluke plays gets them to 31 points. I just think your defense played really well for a lot of this game. And I wanted to say, I wanted it to be like Shedeur Sanders playing like Caleb Williams did against them in 2021. And it wasn't the same, but for like a good quarter and a half, 2 quarters of that game, in the middle of that game, that's what it looked like. Shedeur had nowhere to run and nobody open. And he starts 6 of 6, and then I think hit like 4 of his next 13 or something. Like, they really had him looking for answers for a bit of that game. That shows you the greatness of Shedeur, that he came back and basically won the game for them. But Steve Linton is a welcome addition to this Baylor defense, and specifically this Baylor defensive line that I think has something in the pass rush category now with him on one side of it. And, Jackie Marshall demanding some double teams. Like, I think they've got something on this defensive line with May and Jackie Marshall. Hopefully Cooper lands when he comes back. And you can run some things. Don't be surprised to see some stunts from Baylor and getting in on the quarterback, especially with the blitzing linebackers that they have. Steve Linton opens up some things for them. And I was quite surprised. Again, I wasn't saying this guy was going to be nothing, but I was like, well, let's see. Well, let's see what he can give you. And he's given them more than I thought he would already. So, wow. Steve Linton deserves what praise he's getting this week, and deserves, obviously, to be at the top of that QB pressure category from PFF. He certainly looked the part on Saturday doing that. Let me know what you think about this Baylor defense. Is it for real? We were kind of misled the first few weeks in terms of the numbers. I told you that last week. But I saw some really positive things from this Baylor defense, and one that I think is one that you can hang your hat on later on in the season. But let me know what you think. Drop that down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the quarterback situation and about RG3's tweet. I'm just trying to make some sense of it. Drop all that down in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Ring that notification bell. Get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube. And when we're doing that, it's going to be dropped wherever you get your podcast. It is the home of the only Baylor exclusive podcast that's dropping 5 days a week, and it's completely free. And again, it's only Baylor content. So remember that. Be sure to give it a like and a subscribe. Once again, we're getting close to that 3,000 subscriber mark. We want to get there before the end of next month. No, before the end of next week. How about that? How about them apples? So be sure to find us wherever you get your podcasts as well. The listener count really helps as well. We will be back tomorrow on your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.